Next up now is Margaret Lennon, and Margaret is here tonight to speak on behalf of DCA Warriors. And I've come to know Margaret through a mutual friend, and this mutual friend is part of the story, so we let the story unfold. So Margaret, thank you so much for joining us tonight on Central Ground.
Thank you, Anna.
Maybe you might just tell us a little bit about DCA Warriors.
Okay, we started DCA Warriors, 4 of us, in 2012. We were on Facebook. There was a discussion of children having a payment called DCA removed on review. So it's domiciliary care allowance. Now, to get that payment, you have to jump a very high bar. But the Department of Social Protection had took over the administration of the scheme from the HSE. And suddenly all these children who had qualified were suddenly reviewed and they didn't qualify anymore. And this also meant their parents would be receiving carers allowance. Often carers have to give up their jobs or their, further education, etc., that they planned. So that meant, in effect, these families were going to be destitute, and some of them were left with nothing. And they couldn't go on unemployment benefit because they had to be there to care for the children. So we decided we'd set up this little page, and we did. And very quickly we realised there was going to be a whole lot of other issues. So the name of the group is DCA Warriors, but it's Dedicated Children's Advocacy Warriors. That's what we're called. So we made a lot of inroads. We looked for the domiciliary care scheme to be completely reviewed, which was achieved. We got 2 seats on the DCA review group meetings, which lasted for 7 years. Other things that we would have done, an excellent lady or an excellent person told me about assessment of need. The HSE had decided they were going to develop new standard operating procedures, and they were in place, but nowhere could a copy of the new standard operating procedures be found. They weren't published, which was interesting. So long and short, I tracked down a person who would give me a copy, and when I got them, I was absolutely appalled that they had really taken away anything that was going to guarantee the children anything rights-based, because the assessment of need is actually underpinned by the Disability Act. If you refer your child, or a GP refers your child, you're entitled to have the assessment done and a statement of need issued to you within 6 months of the referral. Now, the statement of need is actually a legally binding document, which a lot of people don't actually realise. They also don't realise that their children are being referred basically onto different lists, which are in effect just waiting lists where they'll have no legal rights whatsoever. So we started a campaign, and we ended up testifying before the Oireachtas Committee on the assessment of need. Our members are incredible, you see. They give us huge amount of information. We decide then what we can take in with us. We would have brought in a whistleblower, came to us, for example, in the education system, gave us a lot of information on the abuse of resource hours within the education system. They have done a protected declaration. We have met with the Department of Education. We want action. We don't go in and say, look, be nice to us. That's grand, but we want action, all of these things. So the Supreme Court case is another issue. Go ahead. You were going to say something to me, Anna.
That's what I was just going to
right.
to bring on to Margaret. You
Yes.
A recent victory in the Supreme Court, and so you might just give a background to that case and tell us briefly how you ended up in the Supreme Court.
Okay, so 2 children. The first child we'll call A has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. In effect, what that means is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is a connective tissue disorder. It affects all the skin, the tissues, the organs, everything. Postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome is an autonomic disorder, which means basically everything that your brain unconsciously controls. In dysautonomia or POTS, this is defective. So you have children who will stand up, we'll say, for moving from lying down to sitting up, or sitting down to standing up, they get a huge drop in blood pressure.
Okay.
So, and massive rise in heart rate.
Okay, so Margaret, what was it that you were seeking for these children?
Okay, the other child has spina bifida and a number of other issues. So with the POTS, the EDS case and the POTS case, there are no medical experts in Ireland. There is no medical team at all in Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Now, I contacted Anne Mix today from EDS Ireland, EDS and HMS, the Irish page. I wanted the figures, and she said a rough estimate is there's over 1,000 diagnosed and adults, and there's well over 250 children diagnosed. Now, the Minister for Health, the last figures I saw, there is quite a discrepancy there. He is stating that there is less than 50 cases of EDS in Ireland. Now, of course, in order to have a diagnosis, you need to have a doctor who knows what they're looking at.
Oh, okay, Margaret, but can you tell me, please,
sure.
What was the court case about?
What the court case was about was the youngster who has EDS and POTS. The medical conditions weren't diagnosed here, unfortunately, and this led to the child ending up out of school, being granted 2 hours of home tuition, which meant they were also deprived of their education. Now, the parents went to the HSE. The physiotherapist in the HSE did a risk assessment, told both parents and the child on 2 occasions that there was to be no walking outside because there was such a high risk of falls. The OT in the HSE came to the family's home and asked the child would they use a power chair. That was the only safe way of getting around, and the child agreed. So the parents said, well, look, won't I need an adaptive vehicle? And the response was from the OT, yes, and there'd be no problem getting it. Most of the clients are much worse off than this child. So at a meeting later on in the month with a team, the OT said she had changed her mind, that wasn't going to offer this, what was recommended, and not to bother applying for the primary medical cert. It wouldn't be given. So the
OT is
occupational
therapist, and she's employed by the HSE.
HSE, and the physiotherapist is as well. So look, the family applied then for the primary medical cert in January 2017, and the area medical officers in the HSE take care of all these. The family didn't know until after the fact that the area medical officer had contacted the physiotherapist for a report, and neither the area medical officer or the physiotherapist notified the family that this had been requested. Anyway, she did a subsequent report, which she then contradicted herself and said that there was no mobility issues outside.
Okay.
The parents got the files, and they noted that in some of the HSE files, the word Munchausen was written. You're familiar with Munchausen syndrome?
Yes. So I know it's a very, very, very complicated, and it was a case through the courts over a couple of years. Just if you can just move it, because time is of the essence. We just we're going to try and keep it to the hour. just
family,
move us quickly to
the
what
family
happened.
decided to go to the legal route, and thankfully found Stephen Kerwin, who is an absolutely excellent litigator.
Our mutual friend.
Our mutual friend, could not recommend him highly enough. This man is going to go very, very far.
Yes. Stephen is a past pupil of mine, and I have to say an outstanding student that I have really, really fond memories of. So Stephen, then you engaged the services of Stephen.
The families engaged Stephen, and he came back and he said, look, can we attach this other child's case? So this was the second child with spina bifida. And yes, so both families decided to go ahead. Went to the High Court.
My thing is DCA Warriors. You're here to speak for DCA Warriors.
Yes, the two families decided to go ahead with Stephen, and it went to the High Court, and the High Court ruled against the families. It was then went to the Court of Appeal in Dublin, and again, the three justices ruled against the families. It's interesting to note too that on two occasions, we'll say this happened, when the child who has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome went to meet the area medical officer, first of all in the HSE, to be assessed for the primary medical cert. It was in a room that isn't wheelchair accessible, and the area medical officer instructed the child to stand up and walk, and he fell down. So we moved along then, and in the High Court of Appeal, you can see one of the children there outside. The building this was held in is not wheelchair accessible, and this was a case on primary medical cert to wheelchair users. So again, the High Court of Appeal, they ruled against the families, and then went into the Supreme Court, and both families would like to completely, they cannot express their gratitude to Stephen Kerwin, who ran this case, enough. Stephen got two barristers on board. Derek Shortle, who was involved all the way through, another excellent litigator, and for the Supreme Court, Michael Lynn, who was just fantastic. So long and short, after all the years, the Supreme Court judgment was issued in June of this year, and the families won on all points of law.
Fantastic news.
It is, but now it looks like the judgment was issued on the 18th of June. Families have gone in the interim and been granted the primary medical cert because they've cited the Supreme Court judgment. But the two families who took the proceedings and won the victory for this are still without anything at all from the Disabled Drivers Board, and this is 3 months on. They don't have primary medical cert, they have no answers, and I believe they've now instructed their solicitor, Stephen, to re-enter the case before the Supreme Court because the Disabled Drivers Board have decided not to respond, it appears.
Right. A story that's quite similar to what Enda had to say earlier on, just this stone wall.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, Margaret, I know that we'll be putting up the links. You've sent me over some links that people can use if they want to make contact with your website. So the link for that will be available, underneath the video.
Thank you, Anna, and may I wish you the very best of luck in your new venture. We have 26,000 plus members on our site, and an awful lot of them will be wanting to speak to you. And I thank them all for all the work they are doing to help each other. Thanks, Anna.
And thank you, Margaret. I suppose I just find you a hugely inspirational woman. You started off with it was very, very small. It was a little page, and then it grew. And you have, I suppose, escorted or helped and guided these families through the courts and stood with them. And it's fantastic, really.
There's many more to come, please God.